Hey there, circuit gamers! In today's video we are going through camera and overlay settings of a game. If you're a creator who already created a game, this is the go-to video if you want to have more interactive overlays and information on your game for the players and the watchers. So let's just get into it! So in today's video, we are going to once again be using our Robot Explorer game page. If you're a creator and have your own page, go there and we start the journey from the dashboard. From here, we are gonna go to the settings, which is located on the bottom left on the page. And this is where we'll be playing most of the video today. So we're gonna go to the camera and overlay. And first thing we're gonna do, so in this video today, we're using our Robot Explorer RC car as a test bed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to preview the RC car, and now I'm able to control it, and I also see the video feed in real time. So now we are actually able to control the camera settings of the capture card or of the camera straight away on the game settings page. We don't need to edit any code, we don't have to mess with settings or test them one at a time and then restarting the streamer. None of that complex stuff. All we literally have to do is preview the specific streamer or the camera we're using, and then we are going to go down to the end of the page and we will see camera adjustments. So the reason we're using camera adjustments here is we are able to in real time change different values like contrast or saturation or brightness without having to change any code. It's really convenient, especially since you're able to see the results straight away rather than having to reload the whole code every time you make any single change. That's basically the reason we made this feature, because when we were doing different games, we realized that camera adjustments are pretty important to have a nice picture for the players and the watchers, but in order to achieve that picture, you have to mess a lot with the settings, and changing one little setting at a time is a very time-consuming process. So here, because we're using a capture card with a GoPro, we only have 4 settings, but depending on the camera you're using, like for example, if you're using a Raspberry Pi HQ camera, you will see, I think, like 20 different settings at the same time. If you're using a webcam, depending on the webcam and the manufacturer, they set the settings that you are able to mess around with, but there is no, so to say, one common ground. All of these depend on the manufacturer of the camera or the capture card. But here, for example, we can mess with saturation. So right now it's on 180 and I'm going to reduce it to 69, and you can see that the picture has changed quite substantially. You can see much less color here, and if I increase it, you can see it increases straight away. Then at the same time we can mess, for example, with hue. We're gonna reduce it, and now you can see the color reproduction is totally different. And yeah, there's a lot of different settings depending on your camera or on the capture card you're using. And then if you messed around the settings too much and you just want to revert them, all you have to do is press this reset button and it will go back to the original settings of the manufacturer. So now that our video feed is great on the camera, we can actually start adding all types of overlays to the game. This is very valuable both for watchers and players to interact, to know what is happening in the game, and to make the game experience as clear as possible. So some of the most important things we recommend using is, for example, adding a current player list. So I'm going to set a position, usually we set it to top left, and automatically on the preview you can see it already shows. So this is how a player will see it when they're playing. Let's just zoom into it and you can see here. So it shows up on the top left. And then if I want to change that, I can just change the position to any other of the available, like for example bottom right, and now it's showing on the bottom right, as we can see on the preview. It's really cool that things like that happen in real time in the preview, but also they happen in the game itself, so that is very convenient. If you forgot or you realize in the middle of your event or a game session that some of the overlays are needed or are missing, all you do is add them in the camera and overlay settings and they will pop up automatically in the game that is currently happening. It won't wait until the next one. Everything will show instantly. So now that we added the current player list, another important thing we recommend always adding in any game is showing the remaining time. This is by far one of the most useful features, because when it's added, the player, when they're in the game, they know exactly how much time they have for the whole play, and also they know when their turn is about to end, meaning that they can plan their game experience wisely. It's also important for other players because then on the watch review they can see when is the next turn about to happen. Now let's see what other options we have here. For example, the your turn indicator. So the way the your turn indicator works is that if you have a turn-based game, so for example you have something like on our Batman 66 machine where you have 4 players playing at the same time, but then there is a turn, so only one player controls the machine at a time, even though there's 4 players in the game itself. You are able to add this your turn indicator. You can choose whatever image you wish, and then it will pop up for the player when it's their turn, so they will know that it's now their game. So I'm going to add the your turn pop-up indicator. Here I'm going to use one from the Batman 66 we have, and I'm going to upload the file, and you can load whatever image file you want, also maybe GIFs. As far as I know, GIFs are also supported. And now when it will be a person's turn, a your turn pop-up will show up to the player. Added to that, you can also add a your turn indicator. So the pop-up only shows for a couple of seconds, and the your turn indicator stays for the whole time the player is playing. So the way you do the pop-up is you can have something big that shows up instantly for the person and they can see it very clearly, and the your turn indicator is something that you don't want it to be too visual because it can potentially block something, but you can still have it on the game so the person actually sees that it's their turn right now, even if they miss the pop-up somehow. So let's add a your turn indicator, and there we go. Now we have a your turn indicator right here, and it will stay for the whole time of the person playing. So the next setting we're going to add to our game is an overlay image. So the way you use the overlay image is if you want to block some parts of the video feed, for example, there's something behind it that you don't want to show, like maybe it's a messy room, or you want the player to actually only focus on a certain part of the video feed, this is a perfect thing to do. In our case, we mainly use it for games like pinball machines, just because of the way the camera is positioned. There will always be some extra stuff on the sides, and using an overlay image is an easy way to hide the unnecessary parts of the game. So now let's go to our, again, game settings page, and now I'm going to add an overlay image. So again, I just select this feature, and then all I have to do is select my overlay image. And again, it can be whatever you want. Just make sure that the overlay image is 16:9 ratio, otherwise it's going to be stretched. So I'm going to open the image, and look what we have here. Now we have an overlay from our Metallica pinball machine showing up on the preview. And as you can see, it is blocking a lot of the camera feed, which is valuable in this case because you just see a lot of random stuff on the sides of the pinball machine. But let's actually preview it and see how it looks on our RC car. There we go. Maybe for the RC car it's not the best use case, but in a pinball machine game, for example, where you also combine 2 cameras at the same time to show the game screen and the pinball machine itself, it's a perfect way to first of all divide 2 different things via a graphic, a visual, and then at the same time you're able to hide unnecessary elements. So it's a very useful feature. So the next overlay we're going to be adding is the countdown timer. The reason we need it is, imagine you have a more competitive game, for example like a racing game, where timing and score is really important. So you want to make sure that all the players know that their game is about to begin and know exactly when it starts using the timer. This is a bit of a more complex feature since you actually have to make sure that in your game engine settings you actually set the time for that. And also, if you want to disable controls during that period, you also have to set it in your Python code. In this setup we won't be doing all of that, but we already pre-selected the timer to be 10 seconds. And now what we're going to do is let's go to the game page, or the game setting page, and I'm going to add the show countdown timer. The tricky part is that it won't show up here in the preview. Even though I restart it, you can see it doesn't show. Even if we enable it, it will not show anyway. But if you actually queue up to the game, you'll be able to see it. And additionally to that, basically it's just text in the center, so like time going like 10, 9, 8, 7, depending on the number you started with. And there's a background image behind, which is currently this circle, but you can set it to whatever you want. For the sake of it, I'm just gonna put our Discord community button here. And now that we added it, just to show you how the overlay actually works, I'm gonna go to the game. I'm going to queue up. Let's accept that AFK checker, and let's maybe put full screen. And now you can see before the game starts it's 9, 8, 7, 6, etc. So it's a countdown timer. And then the random image we have behind, which is join us on Discord. Next up, we're going to be adding an intro video to our game. So if you want to go one step further, you want to tell a story about your game or explain how it actually works or show something important for the player, you can add an intro video that will play before every game, right before it starts. So when a person queues up, they will first see that video, and then the game will actually begin for them. So the way we do it, as usual, we again go to our game setting page and we're adding a new element, and that is the intro video. So again, all I have to do is add it and then upload my video file. Again, let's use one from the Batman 66 pinball machine. Let's let it load. One thing to keep in mind, that you also have to add it in the game engine as a pre-game phase. So since we add a video that plays before the game actually starts, we also need to define it in the game engine. So here I'm going to the game engine, and here I'm going to put the max length for the pre-game phase in seconds, and I've put already 15. So it depends on how long is your video. If the video is actually shorter, the pre-game phase will end earlier. So let's put 15. And now to actually check that the video will play before the game starts, again, as usual, let's just queue up and let's see what happens. And there we go. We have a video playing before the game is about to begin. Next up, let's add some music to our game. So what you can do is, if your game doesn't have audio or you want to add an extra layer of audio, what you can do is you can add music to your game, meaning that every time a person queues up, they will hear the file you added as a background song to the game. It doesn't have to be a song, it can be something totally different that just has audio, but you are able to add it through the overlay page as well. So let's go and do that quickly. So again, I'm on the overlay page, camera and overlay page, and I'm gonna go to adding a new element, and I'll select background music. And now, as usual, all I have to do is upload a file. We already have here one, song.mp3, and there we go. Now the song has been added. You can actually add multiple songs to the game. If you want to have a whole playlist, you can do that too. Next up, we are going to add control instructions. So if you have unusual controls, or maybe controls that users really need to figure out pretty quickly, or just generically you want to make sure that users clearly see what are the controls in their game, you can add control overlay to your game. So the way we do it is we add a control instructions element to the page, and then all we have to do is again select the image we want. Let's put robot controls, this is the one. And we can also set the position. So the reason it is important to set the position is that you really don't want to be in a situation where you're somehow blocking some elements of the page by mistake. So let's leave it at, let's put it to center right, for example. And there we go. Now we can see the controls here. If you want to add even more image elements on top of your camera feed, you can still do that. All you have to do is press extra images as an element, and just like as with the control instructions, you can add whatever images you could imagine. Let's put another, let's say, robot controls element, and as usual you can set the position. And now, as you can see, I have two control elements on my overlay. Of course, if you're going that way and you want to have a lot of overlays, make sure that you're not actually blocking any game view. But yeah, you can add as many overlay images as you could possibly imagine. So now we covered most of the elements that you can add to your game page as overlays, images, videos, songs, etc. But there's still more. However, they are more complex, and we won't be covering them in this video in full, but we can show you and explain what they mean per se. So let's go again to our game page. I'm actually going to zoom in here, and here we have still what? 7 different elements. So I'm gonna go through each of them and explain to you guys what do they mean. So the show pre-game timer, you can put it to the game, and for example in our Mario Karts, why we use it is there is 30 seconds to get ready for the game. So we'll have a timer telling you, okay, there's 30 seconds still for you to get ready. And then when that when the pre-game timer ends, there will be a countdown, for example, and then an actual timer for the game will start. So you can use the show pre-game timer to indicate to the players how much time they have left before the actual game begins, like the actual race, for example. Next up, we have the height scoreboard element. So if your game doesn't have any scoring system and you want to make sure that no random scores are shown, you can just press add the height scoreboard element, and the scores will not be shown after the end of the game. Next up, we have the end game image, which you can use at the end of the game to tell something to the users. For example, hey, thank you for checking out my experience, and then maybe you can have a link to some survey there, etc. And then later we have even more complex versions of that. If your game has actual end game events, like for example, somebody won or somebody lost the game. If they won, you can add a custom image congratulating on them winning, and you can also add a custom sound the same way. So you can add additionally a sound to that. So when a person wins your game or gets to a certain high score, or if you have like a special event where the first person to reach, let's say, a score of 10,000, you can make a pop-up at once the game ends saying congratulations, you won the tournament, or congratulations, you're the first one to get to 10,000 points as an image, and then also a background song behind it or a background sound element. And same goes for losing. So if a player loses, you can have a custom lose pop-up image and also a custom sound element for that as well. So now that we added all of our possible overlay settings and configurations to our game page, let's actually go to the game page and see what it's going to look. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a bit ridiculous because we just added a bunch of stuff. But let's queue up and see how it looks and if all of these elements actually work. So I'm going to go to the game page. I'm going to queue up. Going to wait for that AFK checker to pop up. There we go. Gonna queue into the game. Let's actually go full screen for this one. And let's see what happens. There we go. We have the intro video playing for the Batman 66 in the Robot Explorer game page. Makes no sense, but the feature itself works. And then let's see what happens next. Pretty nice Batman 66 video. Okay, we have the song playing. You guys should probably hear it as well. We also have the pop-up of the timer, so like how much time is left before we can start playing. It's gonna disappear. Now it's the you're up pop-up telling us that it's our turn. There's also a you're up showing on the center right there behind our controls. We just added too many overlays, and I'm even able to control the car as usual, even with all of these overlays. And I think this summarizes our whole video. We managed to set different camera settings, adjust saturation, hue effects, etc. If you have a more complex camera, you can do even more. We're able to add all types of overlay elements, from simple ones like the current player list and the timer of the game, to actually adding intro videos, more complex things like a countdown timer, and so much more. I think overall it's a really cool page on the game settings. It allows you to customize your game on a very advanced level without having to code any single line of code or having any additional software, which is pretty awesome. So I highly recommend, when you build your game, you mess around with this page as much as you can to offer an awesome experience for your players. Like and share this video if you think it was useful. Leave a comment below if you have any questions or other suggestions of the videos you think we should be making. Subscribe to our channel if you like the content we're producing, since it helps us a lot with the YouTube algorithm and also keeps us motivated to keep making more of these videos. And we'll see you next week with another build video telling you more in depth of some awesome things that you can do on Surrogate.tv.